Thank you. Today is Thursday, May 16th, 2024. It is 3 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Resolution, please.
Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Greater Madawaska calls to order the May 16th, 2024 regular council meeting at 3 p.m.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Vex, second by Councillor Thompson. All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. Please stand for O Canada. Seated. As we gather in chambers, I would like to acknowledge on behalf of Council and our community that we are meeting on unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also like to thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Thank you, Miigwech. We move on to 2.1, approval of agenda. Resolution, please.
That the agenda of the council meeting of May 16th, 2024 be approved as presented.
Do we have a mover? Councillor Popke, second by Councillor Tripp. All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. 3.1, approval of minutes, resolutions 94-24.
Be it resolved that the following minutes are approved by council. April 18th, 2024 regular meeting, May 9th, 2024 public hearing.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Levesque. All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. Acceptance of minutes, resolution 9524. Resolution, please.
Be it resolved that the following minutes are accepted by council. March 21st, 2024 Canada Day Committee, April 24th, 2024 Canada Day Committee.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Tripp, second by Councillor Popke. All those in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. Thank you. Do we have any declaration of pecuniary interests or the general nature thereof? There is none seen. Thank you. Moving now on to section 5.1, Protective Services Department Bylaw 12-2024, Clean Yards. Resolution, please.
That council adopt bylaw 12-2024, Clean Yards.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Oh, Councillor Vex, second by Councillor Thompson. Thank you. I was looking the wrong way. My apologies. Background, please.
So we had the Clean Yards bylaw presented to council at the last council meeting. We had MLES attend the meeting to respond to some of the questions, and it was deferred to this meeting with the request to review with individual councillors some recommended changes. As you'll see, the report doesn't highlight the changes. However, throughout the report, I've highlighted and read the adjustments and additions, and then we could answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you. We've all had time to review this, and do we have any questions, discussion items, or concerns from council on this? Councillor Thompson.
I just want to thank a number of people called me and help help me with some of the changes. After we got the changes before this, I sent them back out to the people who had given input, and there were a couple of questions that I was able to help them understand. But 4D, any noxious weeds must be controlled. Someone suggested we need to say in a safe, non-toxic manner that won't be harmful to the environment, animals, or waterway, or destroyed, so that they, removed in a way that we're not just putting them on someone else's property. We need to destroy the noxious weeds. So I thought that made sense. That can be done. There was a question about the removal of the exemption zones, and
So could you just let us know what page you're on to? So that
oh, sorry,
so the
this
rest
is
of us can get to it.
4F. My iPad goes one page at a time.
Okay.
So it's,
I believe it's
I
page,
should have made
believe it's
note.
page 5 of 10.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, continuing along on that. 4E, there was a question about removing the exemption zones, but I made it clear that we can still have issues with, messes on areas that are natural landscapes. We can't exempt them from this, but this isn't to say that we need to improve all those areas. So the vegetation, the improved vegetation bit, isn't the sole purpose of this bylaw. So I don't know if I've made myself clear, but that made sense. And there was a question about tree branches. That's 4F, about if your branches are going over to someone else's property, how do you get access to the property? And I explained that it's probably that neighbor who's complaining about the branches. So if they don't give you access, we've got different issues. So I didn't think that was an issue. And, an exception for bird feed on 4H. So should we say that's about keeping every owner shall keep their property free and clear of food sources that'll attract wildlife? I don't think there should be an exception, because you can get situations where people have excessive bird food feeders that, most people, when they think of bird feeders, they think of one. But, people leaving trays of food out, like suet and things. Anyhow, it should be in there because they can attract bears. And if we say, well, bird feeders are exempt, then we're not going to solve that problem. I don't think any bylaw officer is going to say, your single bird feeder is attracting squirrels, so you'll have to take it down. So that's why I thought it should stay in there. And yeah, that was the only thing. So the only change I would like to see is something to say, get rid of the weeds in a way that they don't cause problems elsewhere. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns, discussion items from council? Councillor Popke.
I just want to go off of what Lois was saying with the weeds. I'd hate to see them bring pesticides and things like that in to make these yards clean and weed-free, and it's going to cause a whole, basically, continuation of problems in the near future for birds and all that other stuff that's eating those flowers. There should be some sort of natural way of getting rid of them, or just leave them be naturally. Like, to me, they're not really a problem. They go with the territory out here, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Yeah, supplementary. What you're talking, I agree. Usually, we're talking about noxious weeds under the Ontario Noxious Weeds Act. So these are like giant hogweed. We're not talking about dandelions. So I agree, pesticides or herbicides are not a good solution. I would like maybe something in there to what you were saying, to say in the most ecologically sensitive way possible. I know there were some areas around us, actually in the Denby area, that had a giant hogweed. Actually, I'm not sure what it was, something like that. And they had to burn. That was the only way they could get rid of them. So it's not just pesticides, there are options, and burn and dig. But it's always difficult when you get, weeding your own garden is hard enough. But if you get these things all over your property, it's tough. But yeah, if we could add something to that, I agree.
Thank you. Councillor Tripp.
Thank you, Mayor Weir. I've gone through it. I really appreciate the work that has gone into this, and for Councillor Thompson specifically, providing her passion and expertise into it. I see this as very much a living document. I think we're in a good position now, the way it is, even if we make it subject to discussions today, or if these are included in the next revision. But looking at our environmental issues and the fires, the increase they're talking about now, the impact that that's going to have in future generations as we move forward, I see not so much the clean yard component to this, but managing our natural environment. So the toxic weeds and the really serious weeds and the burning of the weeds is going to evolve over the coming years. So I don't think this is our last discussion around this document. I think we move it forward. It's a huge step forward, and it gives our team what they need to enforce clean yards where it's an issue. And we've really worded it well that we have that flexibility and discretion at the staff level, that we're not going to start sending cars throughout the township looking for violators with yardsticks measuring grass. But it gives them the tools, and I think we're going to need to be back at this on the cusp of each summer, looking at what we're looking at in terms of new species, in terms of invasive species. It's going to require that flexibility. So I think we're at a good start now, but I'd suggest we try to move this along if we're comfortable with it as is, rather than bringing it back for more revisions and more revisions.
Thank you. Supplemental? Councillor Thompson.
Can we ask now for those revisions to be put in, and then?
And they can, they would need to be, we would need to defer, make adjustments and bring it back through? Or would you? Yes.
Yeah, could we say it'd be great, let's put it through with these minor adjustments, or?
Could we move a?
Because I'd like to have it go forward.
Could we move another motion that the bylaw will be adopted with the amendment to 4D to say what you asked for?
Yeah.
Do you want me to read it out? I made some notes. So a resolution then would be that council adopt bylaw 12/2024 clean yards with the amendment to 4D as follows. Weeds to be destroyed and weed control encouraged by use of non-toxic methods.
Okay, thank you. Who was our mover and seconder on that?
It was Councillor Levesque and Councillor Thompson.
Okay, if a friendly amendment agreeable with you, then that's fine, then we can have it. Yeah.
Okay.
And I have one other comment, it's not related to changes, but just somebody was wondering why there's no appeal process, and it was explained to me by Renee that the, what's the other bylaw, the Property Standards bylaw covers major problems. This is for messy. So we want the messes cleaned up quickly without waiting for a long process of no one's going to tear down your house because you've got some weeds in the backyard. So I just thought people would like to know why there's no appeal process on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Popke, thank you.
I just have one more concern, I guess, that was brought to me. If people are worried about bylaw officers just appearing for no reason on their properties, like out of the blue, and once they're there, they get looking at everything and anything, not just the one particular issue that they're there for. So they were concerned about that, and if they can basically receive a notice or something like that, so they're not just some random car showing up in their yard. It's a bylaw.
Go ahead.
Sorry, just to clarify, so bylaw enforcement, as they indicated, is that they're complaint-based. And then the focus would be on this. The intent of clean yards is mostly, I mean, in the little village area and whatnot. So it's intended for, it depends on, and I don't want to say like, it depends on the location, and there's more, when applying this bylaw, it'll be a case-by-case basis on what's needed for that location. So I wouldn't be concerned about this being another reason. It's similar, we already have a property standards bylaw. This would be no different than other bylaws. It wouldn't add more of a reason for bylaw enforcement to attend the property.
And just, whether it's here or any other area that I've ever been in or worked in, that bylaw enforcement is always complaint-based, and their mandate is to deal with the complaint that has been brought to their attention and close that file on that they don't generally would go out and say, well, you've got one car here, but now I see you've got a noxious weed over there. They go for the specific and they address it to close the file generally. Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns, discussion items? I think it'd probably be prudent for us to have the resolution read back to us one more time, just so we have an understanding.
That council adopt bylaw 12, 2024 clean yards as amended with the changes to section 4D as follows. Weeds must be destroyed, and weed control is encouraged to be performed by non-toxic methods.
Thank you. All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. Thank you. We now move on to section 6.1, bylaw 26-2024, road naming resolution, please.
The council approves bylaw 26-2024, being the road naming bylaw, to add Monterey Drive, Black Spruce Court, and Longleaf Way as road names in the township, and repeals bylaw 48-2021.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Levesque, second by Councillor Thompson. Background, please.
Thank you. So this is just the official bylaw that was brought forward to council last month, just to add the proposed names for the Granite Village subdivision to our official road naming bylaw. So when doing so, we have to give notice as per notice type 3 of our notice bylaw 39/2014. So in doing so, we are now bringing forward the bylaw to officially add these names to the road naming bylaw.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concern, discussion items from council? There, none in the scene. All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. Thank you. We are on to 6.2, bylaw 28-2024, comprehensive zoning bylaw resolution, please.
That council receive a report from EcoView Consulting Services outlining the final draft updated comprehensive zoning bylaw, and that council repeal bylaw 22-2003 and approve bylaw 28-2024, being a comprehensive zoning bylaw for the entire township of Greater Madawaska.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Popke, second by Councillor Levesque. Background, please. I believe we have Kent here for this.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Weir. Hello, everybody. So here we are. We've made it. As I've outlined in the report, it's been over 2 years now on this project, and it looks like we're coming to the final stretch here. There was, of course, a second public meeting with the zoning bylaw last week. I was not in attendance, unfortunately, but I was made aware of the comments that were received at that meeting. So I do believe that we have addressed the comments that have been received over the course of the last, I guess it would be not quite a year since we had the previous statutory public meeting. Overall, I think that there's been good conversations and good comments that we have received, and constructive comments that we have received from the public and staff and council. We've attempted to put those comments to use or into action into the latest draft of the zoning bylaw. But essentially what you have is a tool or an implementation tool to implement the policies of both the Renfrew County official plan and the provincial policy statement. So I've outlined in my report to council just sort of the general comments that we received at that first meeting and sort of over the course of the past almost year, as I said. I've attempted to just kind of explain, how we try to reconcile those issues, or how we've attempted to address those issues. I think one of the biggest items, the biggest pieces that we had heard, and this was mentioned, of course, at the first statutory public meeting, one of the biggest issues that had come up was the EMR, the aggregate resource mapping, or the aggregate resource zone. So I believe that we have rectified that issue. We have now on these schedules an accurate reflection of the county's mapping. And of course, as I've noted in the reports, the aggregate resource reserve areas is intended to, it has to reflect the mapping that the county provides in that regard. I'd also pointed out some of the other concerns that have come up, especially the shoreline development concerns and issues that have been, and questions that have been raised. What we try to do with the zoning bylaws, we try to, while implementing the policies of the OP, we try to ensure that anybody who's redeveloping or establishing new development in these areas, especially the shoreline areas or areas adjacent to sensitive uses, maintain certain standards or certain setbacks. Nothing's stopping anybody from amending these documents on a site-specific level if they can demonstrate that they meet the overarching policies. However, we do want to ensure that there are controls in place as a standard, and I do believe we have those in place with the new zoning bylaw. And I think that essentially sums up what has happened in the time since we did have our last public meeting. And so I think we're at the point now, and as we've outlined in the report in previous correspondence, that we are at a point now to move this forward and have council, if it so chooses, approve the zoning bylaw and repeal the current zoning bylaw and replace it with the zoning bylaws presented. So I'm happy to answer any questions that the council may have, and yeah, I'm at your disposal.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Any questions, comments, concern, discussion items from council? Councillor Thompson.
Hi, thank you. 2 years, you say? Wow. I liked all the community consultations, the maps and whatnot. Now, I had a couple of questions that I sent to Renee that she said she forwarded to you, and I'm wondering what happened to those questions. Did you get them?
Perhaps Councillor Thompson, for matter for people who are watching.
The questions?
The questions, and that might help.
Hope I
Kent
can
refresh
remember
us.
them, because I assumed they would be part of this process. Do you remember them? I know there is one that
Well, the ones in particular you're looking for.
one in particular
Yeah.
is the location of the closed waste facility
Right.
in Madawaska was one. It was on the wrong side of the road in the wrong place.
So yeah, in regards to that, through the mayor to Councilor Thompson, so the closed site, we don't have a confirmed location. I know that you had pointed out that location. We're hesitant to make that change without the documentation from MACP or any sort of confirmation on that end. And that's simply because we don't know for certain, and we don't want to place that burden on a landowner without knowing for certain. So it's in the spot that it was before. The schedule that you'd marked up, that I did see that you're marking, that's the existing schedule. So we haven't changed it from that existing schedule. So it's just carried over from that schedule now. If we can confirm at some point in the future, at any point in the future, we can make that change without an amendment to the bylaw. We could make that change as a sort of a housekeeping amendment, not even a housekeeping amendment, but a sort of a technical amendment without approval from council. So we will dig into that more, but from what we had looked at, we didn't have 100% confirmation that that was the site. And so we don't want to then change it from what it is now, and just in case it's not, right? So the risk of changing it versus keeping it where it is greater.
Supplemental?
Strange, but I'll accept it. Thank you. Or anything else? Sorry to put it on you, but
Is there anything top of mind that?
I know everyone's waiting.
Through the mayor, I think that there was, I noticed that there was a couple of comments about the schedules. And so I believe that we've addressed them. I think what I would suggest is I can provide those, and we didn't have enough time to provide them specific answers. I think they require a little more specificity in terms of what the answers to those questions are. So I'm happy to do that for Councillor Thompson. Like if it's required to do it, if we're required to defer a decision until she's been provided with that information, that's fine. We just need time to go through the mapping and make sure that those questions have been answered.
That was it. That was it, if I may. Sorry. In 2018, apparently, prior to 2018, the schedules showed settlement areas including Griffith, Madawaska, Dacre, Mount St. Patrick, and Berryvale. In 2018, I found out they somehow disappeared, which is odd because I don't think any of the people in any of those areas were consulted for that change. And yeah, where did they go? Thank you.
So through the mayor to Councillor Thompson. So the settlement areas were changed by the county, and I believe that they were changed in 2020. They were removed. The county went through what's called a land needs assessment. So they look at the settlement areas throughout the county, and they determine through population projections whether they need more land to accommodate that population, or they don't need as much land in certain areas, and they can shift those settlement area lands to other settlement areas that are either serviced with urban services like municipal sewer and water, or are more suited to accommodate that growth. And they look at this as a county-wide exercise. And so that would have been done in 2020. And in a lot of these cases where there's older hamlets that haven't experienced as much growth, municipalities will often shift those areas within those hamlets. They'll either remove those hamlets entirely, take lands away from those hamlets and add them to other hamlets, or shift it over. The province is they're very demanding in what they need to see if you're ever to consider expanding your settlement area or establishing a new settlement area. So you can't simply just expand your settlement area through a stroke of the pen with an amendment. You have to go through that land needs assessment. You have to demonstrate to the province that you have the numbers to back up what you're doing. So you need to say, okay, well, we're expanding by this much. We need either more land here in this settlement area, or we need to establish new settlement areas to accommodate that growth. So what municipalities will often do is, in those situations, they may make that request, and they need the numbers to back that up. But what they could also do is shift, so they can take lands away, settlement area lands away from one portion of the municipality and add it to another portion, as I said, to those settlement areas that they see as being more suitable for long-term growth. I don't know specifically how the county came to those determinations. I haven't looked or analyzed their land needs assessment. What we have to do as a municipality, or what you have to do as a township, is you have to, with your zoning bylaw, implement those policies of the OP. So if the OP says that there's no hamlet there, we can't create a hamlet. We can't, and even so, the zoning is not going to do that for us. It's the designation in the OP that would do it. So that's where we're left at. It's more of a question to the county where those hamlets went. But as I said, it's through an exercise of a land needs assessment where you make that determination. So it's not through what we've gone through now, and there isn't anything that we can do to change the OP through this process.
Thank you. Supplemental? Councillor Thompson?
So nobody was asking to expand those borders. So there was no need to take that land and designate it somewhere else. I know this is a county issue, but it's very important. Especially Griffith has a fire hall, municipal services, parks, businesses, and somehow it's not considered to be a settlement area, which is where growth should be encouraged before it's encouraged anywhere else. And removing them, I think, cripples us.
Yeah, through the mayor, I'm not, saying that again, I don't know how the county came to that determination, right? So it very well may be that Griffith should be a hamlet. I don't know, but we have to deal with the policy that we have in place, and we have to implement the policy that's in place. We can't just sort of ignore that, right? So I understand where you're coming from, and it's not necessarily a matter of expansion. It's a countywide thing, like you'd said. So they looked at those hamlets and they determined that they were no longer suitable for settlement area growth. That was just the determination that they made.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, supplemental.
This is important to me. So the other issue is intensification, right, should happen within, according to the PPS, in settlement areas before expanding the borders or allowing development outside in the large developments in the rural areas. To say that there isn't enough land there to warrant continuing to call them a development area, there's plenty. There's plenty of that. They haven't been intensified. And if they are to survive, we need the intensification that will make things like water and wastewater and garbage collection, waste collection, schools. Our municipality is growing, and we've only got 2 areas that have all those services. We should be driving all of our growth to those 2 areas, correct?
So through the mayor, I think, so first of all, it doesn't have to, they can happen at the same time. One does not have to happen before the other. But the other thing is that intensification is typically something that occurs in an urban area. So with municipal water and sewer. The limitations that, I'm just trying to sort of set the stage here. I'm not saying that the direction, of the OP, I'm not calling anything into question. I'm just telling you this is how this is sort of, this goes in the province. So the urban areas are the focus of that type of growth, the intensification. Because as everybody is aware, if you don't have municipal sewer and water, you're limited in terms of how many units you can have, right? You have to have sewer or private septic and private wells, or communal systems and that sort of thing, which cost a lot of money and require responsibility through a condo or maybe even a responsibility agreement with the municipality. So absolutely, settlement areas are the focus of growth. Growth could occur in other areas, but settlement areas are supposed to be the focus of growth. Now, it's difficult in when you don't have urban services. That's just the reality because of, like I said, you're constrained. The balancing needs to occur through the official plan. Okay, so what we're dealing with here again is a zoning bylaw. It's not a policy document. It's not sort of outlining the goals and objectives and the policies that are directing growth. It's really just an implementation tool of that OP document. So I want to reiterate that this isn't necessarily the forum to kind of discuss that that philosophy. I've had discussions with this council about you know a local official plan amendment that deals specifically with township goals and objectives and policies. That's something that we will be coming back to council with very soon with the discussion, because we have had discussions with the county staff about how that process would work. So that is something that we will be bringing back to council soon. So I just wanted to ensure that everybody knew that. But certainly that would be the opportunity to have that, where we would have that discussion about sort of the philosophies of how and where we grow in the township.
Thank you. Supplemental, Councillor Thompson.
I agree this isn't the place, but what we're doing is confirming these changes to the official plan. And we've agreed that development should take place, priority should be where services are available. And it's going to be expensive to put housing only, not mixed-use development, all over the township before intensifying the places that's close to the emergency services, etc. So what is, you said you know what the process is and you will be bring it to council soon, I hope. Once we agree to this, does that mean development all over the place without going toward where our services are available? Expensive way to plan, I must say, or not plan. Is there a way for us to change that right now?
Through the mayor, through the zoning bylaw? No, there's not. The zoning bylaw, so the changes that we've made, we haven't made any changes that make it easier or change any sort of development requirements. Like in terms of there's standards that are, you know, lot standards, like zoning standards for a lot, like setbacks and those sorts of things, and you know, lot coverage and that kind of thing. Those are not necessarily, we made some tweaks to those things, but they're generally the same. The zone categories are generally the same. We've taken a few things out here and there, we've merged a few things, but as far as the how and where to grow, the zoning bylaw doesn't really change that. The zoning bylaw is just again, it's a prescriptive, like, regulatory tool. It's not really it's not a policy document. So those questions that you have of, you know, emphasizing the growth in settlement areas or restricting rural residential development, those are more policy questions that lie with the official plan.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And yet we are still constantly making exceptions to the zoning the OP, which we're about to say that is now, all these exceptions are part of the official plan, that shouldn't really be there if we were sending our developments. They should comply with the plan. We shouldn't have to be making constant exceptions to allowed growth where it isn't prescribed in the plan. That'll be my last. Obviously, there has to be another forum, but this is really critically important to the growth, how the township grows. So I appreciate your time, and we've had other explanations, but I guess we have to accept that the ones we've already done are the exceptions we've already allowed, recommended to us by the county and planners, that those we can accept. Of course, we've already accepted them, and put it into the plan, and appreciate all the changes and the consultations you put in. But we really need to move quickly to change the process so that we have more control over growth in this township. And I appreciate we'll be getting apprised of that. So I just thought I'd make sure I understood exactly what we have to change and where, and that this won't affect it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tripp.
Thank you, and thank you for walking us through this. It is a complicated and complex situation. There's clearly, in my understanding now, two elements. There's the OP, which is a different discussion. It's a policy discussion, and I think that needs to be a very robust and open and well thought through discussion with county. Or even at this table, if we decide to have our own OP, as you suggested in a few meetings previous, to have it sit with the county OP. But that's really our tool to describe in ties to our strat plan. Who are we going to be? How do we manage growth? What do we hold true as our principles for the community? That falls to the OP. The tool before us now is the operational tool. It's the nuts and bolts. And I think it's good. It's been a long time coming, not in terms of criticism of length, a lot of work to get us here, and I thank you for that. But I still see what we have before us now as a good tool. It's not perfect, it's not 100%, but it's again, like everything else at this table, evolving because we're going through such rapid change. And it will again evolve as our OP starts to evolve following our discussions with county, but two separate entities. I had a couple of points. One is very clerical and grammatical. In your report to the mayor and council, on the second page in the top bullets, the last bullet, it says that a secondary statutory public meeting will be held on May 9th at council chambers in Calabogie. That created a bit of confusion because we're after the 9th. We may want to just wordsmith that to say has occurred, if that's doable.
Yeah.
When it just created some confusion.
Yeah, through the mayor. So that was because I wrote the report before the meeting happened. So
Okay.
technically, I was right. Right. So yeah, and that was just because just the timing of when I submitted the report. Yeah.
I suspected as much. It did create that element, a very small element of confusion in terms of timing. But it shows that we did have the meeting on May 8th, which I think is an important message to the community that we had it. And there was discussions at the May 9th meeting on things like the definition of the high water, the vertical versus horizontal line. I recognize it's a short term for putting that amendment into it. I'd like to come back to that point. And then I really appreciate the part on redevelopment and intensification on shorelines, because that's an important part for us with growth. We have a number, it's different throughout the township, but there's a number of older cottages that were built back in the 50s and the 40s that are small, and we can see McMansions using the same footprint. We need to find some way to protect that heritage, that they can't expand out or expand back. And it's stuff I think we need to look at down the road, but I'm not sure if that covers that. Is it? I know they can use the footprint, but can they build up and out, or are they restricted just to the size of the facility?
Well, through the mayor, they're always restricted to what the zoning requires in terms of their setbacks, just like anybody else would be, right? So, if you have a non-compliant building or structure, you're allowed to expand it, provided you are meeting the zone requirements, right? So, if I have a deficient yard and I want to reconstruct that old cottage that's only 40 feet from the water, I can expand it as long as I don't go into my side yard, as long as I don't go into my rear yard, right? In terms of the required rear yard, right? So it could conceivably get bigger. But if I'm meeting the zoning requirements, then that's the purpose of the zoning bylaw. I should be able to do that. That's my right, right? So it's difficult because we have to, you want to strike a balance because, there are certain rights for people to reconstruct, right? We know that. We've attempted to do that. As long as you're not going into that yard, you can expand, but you still need to comply with all the other provisions of the zoning bylaw, including your lot coverage, height, other setbacks.
Thank you. Supplemental, Councillor Tripp?
Thank you very much, most helpful. And you mentioned earlier, or a few moments ago, on technical amendments that can be done without having to come back on small things. So the definition of high water, again, it was discussed in previous meetings, but most recently on the 9th. Can definitions, would they fall under the element of a technical amendment if we wanted to fine tune or adjust?
So through the mayor, it depends. I know that's a lame answer, the cop out. But it does depend, right? Like if it represents a fundamental shift in how we're defining something, we would typically want that to have discussion or be circulated, have it in an open forum, right? Statutory public meeting. We have it's sort of a judgment call. And I think that if we went to council with something and we said that we think it's, a technical amendment and it doesn't need a public meeting, and council said, well, this looks like you would have the last say on that because you'd have to approve it. So you could look at that and say, no, we think that, the people should be able to review this and ask questions or make comments and that kind of thing. So yeah, ultimately, staff makes the judgment call, but then council can make the judgment call at that point.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Supplemental?
Nope, that was good. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Councillor Levesque?
Thanks, Kent. Excuse me. Great report, and just to have a few questions for you. And it's back under the heading of the, go back to it, the protection of the shoreline areas. I know it was brought up at the May 9th, a question around the horizontal line between two properties, and I think that's been altered slightly, and I also think the setback went from 15 meters to 20.
That's correct.
Is that correct? Okay, just want to clarify that. And then there was also a comment in there about, however, the extent at which the lower tier municipality may reduce the setback to those situations is at their discretion. So I guess that's through the minor variance, or can it go the other way? So in other words, you've put forth going from 15 meters to 20 meters. Can we, with this tool, can we go back to 30 meters as to where it was?
Through the mayor, yeah, you could conceivably do that. You could have it it's 30 meters with every property all the time. That's a choice you could make. Again, the OP policy is always going to provide a person with sort of a basis to make an application to reduce it, but you would apply that standard as being 30 meters, and you could have it across the board. We felt it was necessary to continue to have some sort of, for existing lots of record, right? So lots that have been created. We felt that it was necessary to still have some sort of allowance for reduction in those cases, but so as a compromise, we took it back, but kept in still a built-in reduction. But it's certainly, if it's council's decision, you know, it could be moved back to 30. It doesn't have to be less than 30.
And then in that case, it would have to be a minor variance approval to
Or,
make it.
yes, or a zoning bylaw amendment, yep, to reduce it.
So without creating more complexity and extending this whole process, if I, for instance, would like to bring that back to a 30 meter, and do we put that to a vote for this document, or like what's the process to make that happen?
So through the mayor, I think I would probably be more comfortable with you deferring a decision, us taking the document and then making sure that it reads correctly. Because I don't want to sort of make an on the fly, similar to what you just did with the clean yards. I wouldn't necessarily be comfortable with doing something like that in this situation. I think with respect, we would ask that you defer it if you felt like the need to make a change like that you defer it, then we can make that change on our own and ensure that everything is cross-referenced and doesn't sort of lead you to a wall, and that sort of thing.
Thank you. And just before we move to that secondary question, around the lot line, the building line,
Right.
There was a question brought up that the county does not have that today. Have we validated that the county doesn't have that today? And if they don't have that today, why do we need to have it? Because I believe that was the question that was brought forth.
Yep. So through the mayor, they don't have any sort of policy that mentions that. That's from your existing zoning bylaw. So again, we thought that there should be some sort of allowance for those existing lots of record. You see that quite often. But we felt that the established building line was a good, and I've seen that in other documents as well, that it's a good sort of tool to use to determine, okay, well, this sort of ensures compatibility with the area while providing some allowances in situations where you can't necessarily meet that setback with a lot that's been created, right? So there's nothing defined in the OP, nothing that says that you have to have an established building line and use that as your standard. We just felt that it seemed to us to be a good tool to use in order to ensure that compatibility question.
Thank you. Any supplemental?
Well, I don't know how to respond to that. Like they're suggesting that that's how it's done and that's the recommended approach, but we haven't talked about it. So like, what's the impact of that? If it's not there, what's the impact of that?
So through the mayor, if it's not there, then there's no, someone would have, so, okay. So if you're talking about removing that provision altogether and just saying, there's no established building line, there's no permissions for people to build up to 20 meters if they're able to and they have an existing lot of record. If you take that out, then you have every lot, including existing lots of record, are subject to the 30 meter. So everybody has to meet the 30 meter setback. And if you have a non-complying building or structure, you can reconstruct as long as you don't increase that shorter setback. Like when I'm talking about non-compliant, I mean compliance related to that water yard setback. So if someone has an existing 15 meter setback, they can reconstruct as long as they don't move closer to the lake.
Right.
So if you took it out, it would be 30 meters across the board. That provision's gone. If somebody did have an existing lot of record and they wanted to reduce it, they would have to go through the process of either getting a minor variance or a zoning bylaw amendment. So that would be the effect. Ostensibly, it doesn't really, there isn't sort of a ripple effect, I don't think, in that sense. You could take it out if that's what you wanted to do.
So I guess, Oh, sorry. So for this to go forward then with a deferral, what I would like to see, and whether we vote on it, is a deferral to remove the the building line and also have a minimum of 30 meters and have that process through minor variance. That's what I would suggest or put forth.
Is this a motion you're?
I would like
But
to
we're
make that
gonna,
motion
but are we going to, we still have to find out what we're doing with the resolution before us.
Well, that's why I'm looking over
Yep.
for guidance.
Yeah. So if we're going to vote for defer, who was our mover and seconder on this?
Can't recall.
Councillor
Popke and Councillor Levesque?
Councillor Popke, are you agreeable to change to a deferral?
Yeah, yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. Councillor Levesque? Yes, thank you. So, new resolution would be to defer till what would be convenient for timelines for this to be deferred to?
Mr. Mayor, it would not take us long. So, we could, and we don't need, I don't think we would need further notification for this. So we could conceivably get it back to the next available council meeting.
Okay, and would it be at that time we would discuss the 30 meters and the established building line?
So what you're putting a motion on is to actually request staff to, you're deferring this for the changes to be made, to be passed at to be brought back at the council meeting with those changes included.
Okay, so I think we need to have discussion around that then.
The discussion at the next council meeting when we've had a chance to.
I believe you would have a discussion at this point because you're discussing if you want to move this or not. Ideally, you would not approve to defer for us to make the adjustment for you to discuss if we should adjust.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Let's take the first one, the established building line. Any comments, concerns, discussion items on that? None seen from council. I'm opposed to taking out the established building line. We, excuse me, we talk about the heritage and the look of our area, and we have some cottages that have been there for quite a while, and we have that have that look at the front of their lake, and it seems very strange and unfair that if somebody were to build between them, they would have to set theirs back so far. Now, would that have any bearing if we take out the established lot line on the existing homes, that if something happened to them, they would not be able to build back in that area? If it happened to have a fire or something to that effect, they then have to move back that 30 meters as well because it's a new home. And
Well,
sorry.
So, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, Mayor Weir, but if somebody were to have in those situations, someone can rebuild in the same spot, like they're entitled to through the zone provisions. If they have a non-compliant or non-conforming building, they can, let's say, an act of God or like a fire or something like that. They can rebuild in that same footprint, so they're allowed to do that, and they're subject to non-compliant or the non-conforming provisions. So, and then, but as you were saying, if someone were to, it's really more of a provision for vacant lots more than anything, because you don't have an established non-complying building, right? That gives you that non-compliant right. That's still in the zoning bylaw, and that's still going to be there. It's really in those situations where you have a vacant lot and you're between two lots, it just has never been developed, and you wish to build something there, and you might have limited space, you can't meet your 30-meter setback, you can go closer to the water as long as those other two houses are at that established building line is between those two houses, as we've outlined with the 100-meter distance and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And that's why I'm opposed to taking out the established building line, because Would this also too, if there has been, would this be retroactive? So if somebody has a building permit already for a location and they have yet to build and they've planned for this build to be in that certain location, would taking out the established building line affect retroactively somebody who has not built yet but has already got a building permit?
No, it wouldn't, as long as it's an approved permit. If somebody was planning on doing it now and they haven't submitted applications for a permit, as soon as this comes into effect, then they would not be able the permit wouldn't comply with the zoning. But as long as they have an approved permit and, and they build within the certain period of time that the approved permit is required to, that's required under that permit, then it would still be honored.
Okay, thank you. And sorry, Councillor Levesque, was it 30 meters that you wanted altered to?
Yeah, that having to be minimum 30 meters regardless. And any changes to that would be affected by the minor variance application. So it'd be naturally 30 meters, and then if they wanted it closer, then they would have to apply for a minor variance.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Tripp?
And that's for new construction, correct? Not on existing non-compliant buildings.
Thank you. And I believe your first iteration of this, it was 15 meters and then moved to 20, was it? The old zoning, the old zoning was 15, then it moved to 20 in this iteration, and
Yeah, that's correct. And our previous version had 15 as well. Like it followed the old one. Like it was a carried over, and then after obviously the comments that we had received, we tried to find sort of a balance with the 20.
thank you. Moving it from the 20 to the 30, in some areas of our township with smaller lots, is this going to exclude building on some of them? Or go through the minor variance
Exactly.
specifically? Okay.
It would require them to go through that process. Yep. So you could conceivably, someone could demonstrate it if they come to you and they have an amendment that they're requesting. If they've demonstrated, they've done an EIS, they've looked at the impacts of the shoreline and they've demonstrated no negative impact, that sort of thing. And it's, it makes sense on that lot, and also, all the things that we need to go through, then potentially you could approve it. But it does have to go through you as council.
Thank you. And sorry, in regards to that as well, for the established building line, if we take it out fully, the established building line, and somebody wants to do a minor variance to reflect an established building line, is that possible for them?
Yeah, so what you would, if you're looking at the merits of a minor variance or the merits of a zoning bylaw amendment, you would look at things like that when you're looking at compatibility, right? And that's really just an extension of a requirement for compatibility with the established area, the neighborhood. If someone were to come forward with a minor variance, they need to demonstrate, that they're meeting the intent of the official plan. The official plan has policies in there about, the look of the waterfront and that kind of thing. So those would be the types of things that you'd want to look at. Would be, well, there's the houses on either side, or the cottages on either side are closer, or there's clearly some established line of existing buildings, then yeah, you would absolutely take that into consideration.
Thank you. I think, sorry, I may have mixed up the question, but I'm saying, if we take the definition of an established building line out of the zoning bylaw, can people apply for a minor variance for an established building line if it's not within the zoning bylaw?
No. What they would be varying would be the 30-meter setback.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. Any other questions, comments, concerns to have this deferred? Councillor Levesque.
Yeah, just a final word on that, and thank you for the explanations, Kent. I think overall, we went through this election little while ago, and a lot of talk about waterfront development and development in general. And I think, when we look forward to the next potential, when you're coming back with a official plan amendment scenario that we're going to look at, that's really helpful. But I think if we have an opportunity today to look at how we do what we do today without having to wait for this to happen or leave another thing to chance, I think it's an opportunity that we have today to correct some of the wrongs, if you will. And there's still an opportunity for people to apply if they so do feel they need to, but it's just not automatic. And I think the automatic piece is where I have the problem with doing. I think we really should be looking at each scenario individually, and every scenario is individual. Some make sense, some don't, and I think that's kind of what I'm after. And I appreciate your time and everybody else's time. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody need the resolution reread?
Okay, so we are going to be, I'm just moving a deferral, so we're deferring to adjust the minimum setback to no less than 20 or 30 meters, and we are adjusting to remove the established building line as a provision within the zoning bylaw.
Thank you. All in favor? Motion is passed. Did we do a deferral date? Sorry. Okay. Okay, moving on to 6.3, bylaw 29-2024, deeming bylaw 49M-65, Lot 5, Algoma Drive. Resolution, please.
The council approves bylaw 29-2024, being a bylaw to deem Lot 5 of Plan 49M-65 not to be part of a registered plan of subdivision.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Popke, second by Councillor Thompson. Background, please.
So this bylaw pertains to 524 Algoma Drive, which is which is Lot 5 on Registered Plan 49M65, which is a plan of subdivision. So this deeming bylaw basically is a condition of consent for a lot line adjustment. In order for the applicant to have these lands added to their property, a deeming bylaw is required to remove their property from this plan of subdivision. And evidently, this bylaw gets registered on title to the subject lands and comes in a full force once it's done. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns, discussion items from council? There are none seen. All in favor? That is carried. We move on to section 7.1, Finance and Administration Department. 7.1 is 2023 surplus allocation. Resolution, please.
The council approved the allocation of the 2023 year-end surplus of $32,755 to the Capital Works Reserve.
Thank you. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Tripp, Councillor Popke. Background, please.
Good afternoon. So on April 18th, the 2023 audited financial statements were presented and approved by council. The results from the 2023 year-end audited financial statements identified a surplus of $32,754.67 included in the unallocated reserve. As per policy 4-08, reserve and reserve funds on operating budget surplus will be allocated to the municipality's reserve for working capital. Therefore, staff is recommending that the surplus be allocated to the Capital Works Reserve for works identified in the asset management plan.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns, discussion items from council? There are none seen. All in favor? That is unanimous, so carried. Section 7.2, bylaw 23-2024, being a bylaw to establish debt management policy. Resolution, please.
The council adopt bylaw 23-2024, being a bylaw to establish a debt management policy.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Levesque, second by Councillor Thompson. Background, please.
So debt management policies are written guidelines, allowances, and restrictions that guide the debt issuance practices of municipalities. And adherences to these policies ensure that the municipality maintains in a sound financial position. The Township of Greater Madawaska does not have an existing debt management policy. As per Ontario regulation, municipality, so therefore, I'm bringing a policy today. As per Ontario regulation, municipalities must not exceed the maximum annual debt repayment limit of 25% of own source revenues. Own source revenues are taxation, user fees, anything that we create a revenue ourselves. They exclude grants and such. So the proposed policy recommends that this means that your total annual debt principal and interest payments must be 25% must be less than 25% of our own source revenues. So the proposed policy recommends that the township's annual maximum debt repayment limit will not exceed 15% of the township's own source revenues. And this will allow us to have a remaining 10% flexibility to address any emergency issues. So the approval of a debt management policy will provide a framework and guidance for the issuance of debt and to ensure that it's both affordable and sustainable to the township.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns, discussion items from council? There are none seen. All in favor? That is carried. Moving on to section 7.3, bylaw 24-2024, final tax levy resolution, please.
That council approved bylaw 24-2024, final tax levy, being a bylaw to provide for the adoption of the 2024 tax rates and to further provide for penalty and interest in default of payment thereof for 2024.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Tripp, second by Councillor Thompson. Background, please. Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns from council? Councillor Tripp.
Just a comment, I think your description of where the tax goes is a brilliant approach, because it's one of the questions we're always getting, that our money just goes into this void and is lost. So this is really helpful in pairing out exactly how the money is divided, both through county and also through our different services. So well done.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Councillor Levesque.
I agree, and I think it's really well done, and thank you for the report. One of the things that have been presented before in the past is where we relate to other municipalities in the area. So I think traditionally we've been lower than everybody else, and when I mean everybody else, we don't have that in front of us. So I think it was Brayside and neighboring townships. Can you talk to that as to where we are currently with this update, this change?
Yeah, so in the 2024 budget presentation, we did do a comparison of the municipal tax rate. Other neighboring municipalities will all have the same county and education increases as well. So you can assume that the rate that was demonstrated in that presentation, we're still below our neighboring municipalities. So we still do have one of the lower tax rates.
Okay, thank you.
And just to elaborate to that, sorry, in the past, so and additionally, comparison to other municipalities in the area, we increased by, I think, is it 7.18%, whereas our neighbors, you would have seen over the months, approving budgets of anywhere from that up to some 15 to, I think, 25%. So prior to passing our budget, we would have been at a 55% lower than other municipalities, and that gap would have actually been increased with these different municipalities increasing their rates higher, much higher than we did this year.
Thank you. And just one supplemental question. I know we talked about this at budget time. Do we have an ongoing concern, or in terms of looking forward to the future, bringing things up to a level where we're going to move some projects forward, or are we comfortable with the incremental increase over time?
We are looking at an asset funding strategy, an asset management funding strategy that will be presenting more closer to the fall. But Renee, did you have any other comments on that?
As per the asset management plan, we were developing a funding strategy, which we've been working with Watson and Associates to develop that. And it'll help us really identify what we require in the future for operating. It goes out 10 years for operating and capital to really project this annual increments and what we really require to be able to fund operating and asset management and development related projects.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concern, discussion items? There are none seen. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Moving on to section 7.4, bylaw 27-2024, being a bylaw to establish a municipal grant policy. Resolution, please.
That council adopt bylaw 27-2024, being a bylaw to establish a municipal grant policy.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Popke, second by Councillor Tripp. Background, please.
All right, so on April 18th at our council meeting, we were given a motion to come back and bring forward a municipal grant policy. We've reviewed several comparating municipalities, but we do recognize that the Township of Greater Madawaska recognized the value contributions made by community organizations and volunteer groups to improve the well-being of the community and the quality of life for their residents. We do, however, receive frequent requests for financial support and waiver of facility user fees, which are also known as in-kind services. So presently, these requests are approved by council on a case-by-case basis without evaluation criteria or policy-based approach. Therefore, a policy has been developed that establishes eligibility requirements, expectations, as well as an application process. And this will allow staff to be able to consider the information and bring forward to council a process that's consistent, transparent, fair, and improves the well-being of residents within the community.
Thank you. My apologies there. Any questions, comments, concerns, background? Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, this is wonderful. I'm just curious about the applicant must clearly demonstrate financial need. At the same time, demonstrating financial viability. So what kind of need? Is it need for that occasion, or, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, so basically what we're looking is to make sure that that people bringing forward these requests aren't making like a profit, and that they, if they have made a profit from previous years, that they're using their surplus from previous years before they're asking us for more money. So they're not like accumulating this surplus and reserve of funds, right? The whole idea of this is to support an organization that would give back to the community, but not be looking to make funds off of it, but to be able to present some kind of event or and the financial need that they need that support. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to have the event.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns? No? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. It is 4:19. I'm going to suggest a 5-minute break, especially for me, since I came right from one meeting into this one. So let us know when we're
Thank you very much. We're 6 weeks out, so we're busy as a committee, but things are falling nicely into place. There is, in terms of fundraising, we still have the money coming in from the township, but in addition to that, we have received funding, which will start flowing shortly for the bandstand, the 10 businesses at $300. We're just in the process of launching a T-shirt program. We've worked at a committee to come up with a logo and a slogan that will be ratified hopefully the next day or two. Quite exciting, and they'll be available for sale on Canada Day and then throughout the community leading up to Canada Day, just as an extra little bit of money, but also a way for people who are coming into Canada Day to leave with a little bit and a slogan on their back that says they were in Calabogie for a fun event. And you'll see once we get there's 3 logos going around now for vote within the committee, and we should have that ratified in the next little bit. The other thing we're going to launch this year, which is new, budgets are tight. We did not receive from the province that of which we have in the past, so it's left a bit of a hole. That's across all municipalities, so it's the Heritage Canada funding. To make up for that, we're going to, because we have so many kid games and activities and the bouncy castles, we're going to give families the opportunity to sponsor that in their own family name. So for $100, there'll be a poster in 2 or 3 locations throughout the Canada Day activity saying kids games sponsored by the Levesque family.
You can use my
But-
you can use my name. My wife's already told me I'm doing that.
So it's really interesting, and just through chat in the community, for those who have young kids, it's fun for the kids to see their name up, sponsored by that their parents are sponsoring. So that money will be a new way to bring in additional revenue. The other thing that was in process at the last council meeting, but I couldn't get to the specifics of, was the development of a lumberjack event, which will be a large event. It's sponsored or brought in from Toronto, Canadian Lumberjack Program. They go across the Ontario and Quebec provinces putting on these shows. They'll do 3 20-minute shows starting late afternoon and ending just before the band and the fireworks and celebrity starts. Axe throwing, they'll be in the water doing log rolling competitions. It's a really big event. A large price tag at $6,000, and we've had one individual come forward to sponsor it this year, John Shaw. And kudos to Taylor. He helped with that connection, and the 2 of us met with him, and he was in within a minute. He asked for a piece of paper to go back to the office, but the next day, or 2 days later, came to the township with a check. So it's a big event. There'll be a lot of media around it. We're bringing in, pulling all the stops out for media releases. We're going to be doing online, on air, and in print interviews about the lumberjack. We want to draw people from Ottawa and from over in Shawville to the day that normally wouldn't come up to Calabogie. And what we're finding is there's a lot of people that have not been to the lumberjack fair for a long time. The axe throwing, the tree cutting, competitions, it's going to be very active, where it'll be on Madawaska. They're setting up the logistics for it now, but it's a big addition and one that we want to build on. So going into Calabogie Days eventually, but it's a pivotal turning point, I think, for Canada Day festivities. The band and everything else is the same. There will also be some recognition for Shaw Lumber, which is a major part of our historical community. There's 7 generational people in the lumber industry from Ottawa up to Pembroke over the last number of years. So we're very excited about it. And as always, Robin is the one who is keeping us all in line and keeping us coordinated, and magical how she just takes all of these ideas that are thrown on the table, makes sense out of them, and helps us move forward. So a very special thank you to her for all of the work that she's done and leading up to Canada Day. That's really, ideas are ideas. It's the ability to control and put it into motion. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Next questions?
Any questions, comments, concerns? Councillor Levesque?
Just with the lumberjack thing, should we expect to see a councillor debut celebrity kind of thing?
I think we'll have to ask her, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah.
We thought about that, but there's an interesting element around insurance. And part of the arrangement is this organization, just as a serious note, because it does expose us to significant liability with axe throwing and people in the water. They come fully insured. It's part of the contract that's been signed with them. So they run a pretty tight ship, and while there are opportunities for volunteers, they're not involved with the lumber industry for obvious reasons. After Three Finger Lucky participated in the...
Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Thompson?
I'm only insured for chainsaw juggling, so I just want to say that Leslie Cassidy, who's on your team, contacted me after finding out that Shaw Lumber is going to be involved, and she and I thought it'd be a good story for the Highlanders, so that will be coming out early June. So yeah, we have space for us, which is good. Good job, nice.
This is very much a team initiative, and it's not just the team at the committee. It's people in the community are really stepping up because it's an exciting new step forward, and we're hoping it will draw significant numbers. Other than those who just come for the fireworks, this will be a big deal.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? I have one. Do we have any information on the Canada Day activities in other part of our township?
Good point. We've been working well at the committee. It was refreshing this year to see the other two areas here at the table in this room. We have, again, through Leslie, on the $100 naming for those people in Calabogie, we'll be doing a similar initiative up in her area. Funding has been increased to help them out a little bit, and we're sharing where we can on things like the toss games and the kids' games. And because they're at different times, it allows us to shift resources around a bit. So it's really entrenched, not to the point I think it can be. I think it's something we continue to grow on, but it's interesting to see the funding starting and staying within their neighborhoods.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
I just wanted to explain why I didn't ask, is because I've been talking to Leslie and already knew the answer, but it is good that you bring it up at council so people can hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? We will now move on to section 8.2, Recreation and Culture Committee. Councillor Levesque.
Thank you. We had our meeting last evening, May 15th, and well attended by our enthusiastic group. We have a new summer student intern, Rebecca Morin-Lozelle. She'll be with us for the summer and working on recreational and various activities. And one of the first things she's going to be looking at is getting involved in the summer camps. So I think a lot of people will be excited about that. So more to come on that. The committee somewhat sponsored a cleanup day for Earth Week, and sponsored with some coffee and those kinds of things. I think overall went well, but it was relatively quiet, and there were some other groups that were doing similar type things around cleanup around the township. And we talked about whether the committee could be a central organizer for next year to make sure that we could kind of maybe branch out and figure out whereabouts in the township we wanted to focus on and get some other, like you said, Rob, other areas of the municipality involved and what could be done. So we could actually, take a PR approach to it as well and see what was done and who was involved and get some pictures and so on. Some items from the last meeting and things that are underway. We've got the rink facilities, both in Calabogie and Griffith, are being painted for lines for both pickleball and basketball, I think. And so that's starting, and we've got 2 nets that are either have been moved or are moving to Griffith. There were 4 total, so we moved 2 there. And then there is some discussion around utilizing an old salt shed for potential other activities, but that's yet to be determined yet. So, and then reviewing the need overall for a schedule, because as things get more competing for space, we're going to have to look at overall usage of the facilities going forward. As mentioned, there's a Canada Day run that's going to be starting in Madawaska hopefully this year. As July 1st is Canada Day, is actually, their Canada Day is actually the 29th of June. So it's a fun run walk, and things are being organized for that. So again, in the Madawaska area, so lots going on there. And more things around our survey that we put out a month or so ago. Still lots of data that we're collecting from that, looking at different ways of categorizing the needs and assessing, and some ideas around looking forward to more of a strategic approach to doing that, and how do we actually get things done, not just this year, but looking forward into the future years as well. And just as an FYI, in some social media, there were some people, I think, in Griffith area maybe, starting up a cornhole league, and also looking at baseball there as well. So people are just actually coming forward with ideas and things to be done. So that's on the recreation side. On the cultural stuff, we haven't actually had much movement there, but we are looking at opportunities, potential for things like art shows, murals, music lessons, concert in the park, that kind of thing. So those are all things we're looking at to find out what potential they are, what they would look like, when they would be, and so on. So lots going on. And I think that's all we have for now.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, discussion items? No. Thank you. Let's go back to,
I'll connect bilaterally on you with this, but the last few days there's been initial chat with forming a choir in the community called Calabogie Voices, non-denominational, but it would be a nice fit into your cultural work, so I'll make sure it's connected to the work you're doing.
Thank you.
thank you. We'll go to Councillor Thompson.
Just to add to that, there is a Village Voices choir in the Griffith area that's already going, so I don't know if there'd be any, sharing song sheets or, coordination you can do. A sing-off. Thanks.
Okay, let's try and move on to 8.3 now. OPP Detachment Board, Councillor Tripp.
Thank you. We had our first meeting on May 9th of the inaugural board. It's going through a transition process now, which is going well. It's, as you can imagine, a fairly strenuous activity. The board has traditionally fallen under the Municipal Act, and it now falls under the Police Services Act. So with that, there is a significant change in governance, requiring a lot of infrastructure to be redeveloped with the new team. We have been in conversation with the detachment commander, the outgoing chair of the board, as well as community initiatives in Renfrew that are supported by the previous Police Services Board in partnership with funding arrangements and with the OPP. At that meeting, we looked at some of the mechanics that are required. We have another meeting set for the 29th of this month, at which point we'll be ratifying our terms of reference and rules of procedure. And we are looking, we'll talk more about this later in the meeting today, but our community members and incorporating them as part of the process. We've been informed our 2 provincial members will not be nominated until the fall, which again is standard process. There are a few meetings coming up with provincial associations, the Ontario Association of Police Service Boards, which is important coming out of the gate to help us get organized with going forward. We have the 7 sitting councillors. At the first meeting, I was appointed chair of the board, and Councillor Scott Broom from McNabb Braeside as the vice chair. Going forward in the next meeting, we'll be looking for a secretary and treasurer, and then how do we find the staff structure that's going to be required for the board. And money is currently sitting with Renfrew as it moves out of that singular municipal board into a standalone OPP board. We'll be looking for moving the monies into a central account and working again, bringing back to this table a budget for the organization, as all councils will have brought back. So we'll be working at that over the coming 6 weeks. So lots of activity, but lots of promise. It's a really interesting team. And there's a lot of enthusiasm both at the table as well within OPP for things moving forward.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns, discussion items? There are none seen. Thank you for your report, and thank you for stepping up and being the chair of that board. We now move on to 9.1, notice of motion brought forward by Councillor Tripp. Resolution, please.
That council hold further discussion in a closed session pursuant to section 293(2) of the Municipal Act regarding a litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, specifically regarding the causeway easement.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Thompson, second. Sorry, Councillor Tripp moves it. My apologies, and Councillor Thompson seconds. Thank you. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. 10.1, enter into closed session. Resolution, please.
That the council meeting of May 16th, 2024, enter into closed session at 4:45 p.m. pursuant to section 293(2) of the Municipal Act regarding 1, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, specifically A, volunteer appreciation awards, B, community member appointments for Renfrew Police Services OPP Detachment Board, and 2, a position plan procedure criteria or instruction to be applied to any negotiations, specifically A, health services.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Popke, Councillor Levesque to second. All in favor to move into closed? That is carried. Thank you. We are back. We will now move into open session. 11.1, move to open resolution, please.
That the council meeting of May 16th, 2024 move back into open session at 5:12 PM.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Popke, second by Councillor Tripp. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We are in open. 12.1, move to rise and report resolution, please.
The council reports the following as a result of the closed meeting item. 1, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, specifically A, volunteer appreciation awards, proceed as directed and close. B, community member appointments for Renfrew Police Services OPP Detachment Board. Council endorsed the 2 community member representatives as recommended by the Renfrew Police Services OPP Detachment Board, and that an appointment bylaw be brought forward for final adoption. And C, health services information item.
Thank you. All in favor? Oh, did we not have a mover on that already? My apologies. Mover, please. Councillor Levesque, second by Councillor Thompson. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. 13.1, bylaw approval, resolution, please.
Be it resolved that the following bylaws, 12-2024 Clean Yards, 23-2024 Debt Management Policy, 24-2024 Final Tax Levy, 26-2024 Road Naming, 27-2024 Municipal Grant Policy, 29-2024 Deeming Bylaw be deemed read a second and final time and passed by council, and furthermore that 30-2024 Confirmatory be deemed read a first, second, and final time and passed by council at the regular council meeting held May 16th, 2024.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Popke, second by Councillor Levesque. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Now on to 14.1, motion to adjourn. Resolution, please.
That the regular council meeting of May 16th, 2024 be adjourned at 5:14 PM.
Do we have a mover? Councillor Thompson. Second, Councillor Tripp. All in favor to adjourn? That is carried. Thank you very much.